Think about the last time you stood beneath a canvas of stars, stretching infinitely across the night sky. Or perhaps you remember that concert where the music swelled so powerfully that your entire body erupted in goosebumps, and for a moment you forgot where you ended and the sound began. Maybe it was standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon, feeling your breath catch as your mind struggled to comprehend the sheer scale of ancient stone carved by time itself. That feeling, that overwhelming sense of being in the presence of something vast and magnificent, isn't just a pleasant emotional experience. It's not simply magic or mysticism. That sensation of awe fundamentally rewires how your brain processes identity, transforms your sense of self, and most surprisingly, alters your loyalty to others in ways you never consciously chose. Scientists have now discovered that awe may be one of the most powerful psychological forces binding human beings into cohesive groups. It's the invisible glue that fuses individuals into collectives, merging separate identities into a unified we. And this power works for both tremendous good and terrifying evil. Understanding how awe operates might be one of the most important insights into human nature you'll ever encounter, because once you see it, you'll recognize its fingerprints everywhere in society, politics, religion, and even your own daily life. What is awe, really? Before we dive into the groundbreaking research, we need to understand what awe actually is, because it's far more than just feeling impressed or happy. Psychologically speaking, awe is a complex emotional state that emerges when we encounter something so vast, so powerful, or so profound that it challenges our existing mental frameworks. It's what researchers call a self-transcendent emotion, meaning it literally takes you beyond your normal sense of self. When you experience awe, two things happen simultaneously. First, you feel what scientists call perceptual vastness, the sense that you're confronting something enormous in size, scope, complexity, or significance. This could be physical vastness like mountains or oceans, social vastness like massive crowds or historical legacies, or conceptual vastness like contemplating infinity, or the elegance of a mathematical proof. Second, you experience what's called accommodation. Your mind struggles to integrate what you're witnessing into your existing understanding of the world. Your mental models aren't big enough to contain what you're experiencing, so your brain must expand and reorganize itself. This is why awe often comes with a sense of confusion or disorientation alongside the wonder. But here's where it gets fascinating. When your sense of self shrinks in the face of something vast, what fills that space? What rushes in to replace your normal ego boundaries? The answer, according to new research, is often the collective identity of a group. You don't just feel small, you feel absorbed into something larger than yourself. Your individual I begins to blur into a collective we. The science behind the fusion. Dr. Ji Young Song and her research team at the University of Melbourne and Monash University conducted one of the most comprehensive investigations into this phenomenon. Across 5 separate studies involving over 2,100 participants, they set out to test a provocative hypothesis. Does awe specifically promote what psychologists call identity fusion? Identity fusion is a powerful form of group alignment that goes beyond normal group membership or identification. When you're fused with a group, the boundaries between your personal identity and the group's collective identity become porous and overlapping. The group's victories feel like your victories. Threats to the group feel like personal threats. The group's values become indistinguishable from your own deeply held beliefs. This is different from simply being a fan of a sports team or holding membership in an organization. Fusion creates a visceral sense that you and the group are one, that your fate and the group's fate are inseparable. And people who are fused with groups demonstrate extreme loyalty, willingness to sacrifice, and readiness to fight or die for the collective. Song's team wondered, could awe be one of the psychological mechanisms that creates this fusion? Their first studies were correlational, examining whether people who naturally experience more awe in their lives also show higher levels of fusion with important groups like their country or university. The results were striking. People who reported being more prone to experiencing awe did indeed show significantly stronger fusion with these collective identities. But correlation doesn't prove causation. Maybe people who are already highly fused with groups simply seek out more awe experiences related to those groups, like attending patriotic ceremonies or campus traditions. So the researchers moved to experimental studies where they could manipulate awe and measure its effects. In one elegant experiment, participants were randomly assigned to recall and write about one of three types of experiences: a moment of awe, a humorous event, or an emotionally neutral memory. This is a standard technique in psychology for temporarily inducing different emotional states. After this exercise, participants completed measures of identity fusion with their nation. The results were clear. Those who had recalled an awe experience showed significantly higher levels of national identity fusion compared to those who recalled humor or neutral events. The feeling of awe, even just remembering it, was enough to strengthen the sense of merged identity with their country. But the researchers went even further, using cutting-edge virtual reality technology to create awe experiences in the laboratory. Participants donned VR headsets and were immersed in one of two scenarios: either an awe-inspiring underwater scene with enormous, ethereal jellyfish floating through vast depths, or a neutral VR experience of an ordinary aquarium with normal-sized fish. Remarkably, even this completely artificial and brief awe experience, encountering digital jellyfish in virtual reality, was sufficient to increase participants' sense of fusion with their nation. The awe they felt while watching animated creatures that don't even exist in reality transferred to their feelings about their country, strengthening their sense of being one with their national collective. The mechanism became clear across all these studies. Awe creates what researchers call self-diminishment, or small self, a feeling that your individual self is tiny and insignificant in the face of vastness. But rather than leaving you feeling isolated or depressed, this shrinking of personal identity creates space for collective identity to expand. Your sense of I contracts, while your sense of we grows to fill the void. It's as if awe temporarily dissolves the walls between individual and collective, allowing them to merge and blend together. And the evidence suggests this isn't just a cognitive shift or intellectual recognition. It's an emotional fusion that alters how you fundamentally experience your identity. The architecture of collective identity. To understand why this matters so profoundly, we need to step back and consider how human consciousness relates to groups. Each of us walks through life with multiple concentric circles of identity. At the center is your personal self, your individual memories, quirks, dreams, and narrative of who you are. But surrounding that personal core are various collective identities: your family, your friend groups, your profession, your ethnic or cultural background, your religious or philosophical community, your nation, and ultimately, humanity itself and even life as a whole. Most of the time, these collective identities remain somewhat abstract and peripheral to our moment-to-moment experience. You might intellectually know you're an American or a Buddhist or a teacher, but in most moments, you're primarily just you, thinking your thoughts, pursuing your goals, experiencing your feelings. Awe appears to be one of the most powerful forces that can shift this balance, bringing collective identity from the periphery to the center of consciousness. During awe experiences, people consistently report feeling connected to something larger than themselves, sensing they're part of a greater whole, and experiencing a dissolution of boundaries between self and other. Carl Jung, the pioneering psychologist, would have recognized this phenomenon immediately. His concept of the collective unconscious, a shared substrate of human psychological experience containing universal archetypes and symbols, suggests that beneath our individual consciousness lies a deeper layer we all share. All experiences in Jung's framework would be moments when we touch this collective dimension directly, when the archetypes rise from the depths and remind us of our participation in something transpersonal. Jung observed that powerful collective experiences, religious rituals, mythological narratives, encounters with nature's grandeur, all serve to connect the individual psyche with this larger collective dimension. He saw this as essential for psychological wholeness, A person too trapped in individual ego becomes rigid and disconnected, while someone who never develops individual identity becomes lost in the collective. Health requires honoring both. From this perspective, awe serves an evolutionary and psychological function. It prevents us from becoming too isolated in our individual concerns and reconnects us to the collective dimensions of human existence. It's a necessary corrective to the modern emphasis on radical individualism, reminding us that we are fundamentally social and interconnected beings. The double edge, when awe binds us for better and worse. But here's where the story becomes more complex and, frankly, more troubling. The power of awe to create identity fusion is morally neutral. It's a mechanism that can be deployed toward almost any collective identity, whether noble or nightmarish. Let's start with the positive possibilities. When awe connects us to our shared humanity, to the natural world, or to high ideals and aspirations, it can be profoundly beneficial. The environmentalist who experiences awe while witnessing a pristine wilderness becomes fused with nature itself, feeling that protecting the environment isn't just good policy, but a deeply personal imperative. The humanitarian worker who experiences awe confronting the resilience of people in crisis becomes fused with human dignity itself, fueling tireless advocacy. Awe experiences in nature, something accessible to almost everyone, have been shown to increase pro-social behavior, generosity, and ethical decision-making. When you feel small before a mountain range or the ocean, you're less likely to be selfish, more likely to help others, and more inclined to think about collective well-being rather than just personal gain. Some of the greatest social movements have been fueled by shared awe experiences. The civil rights movement strategically created awe through massive marches, powerful oratory, and appeals to transcendent justice. The vision of thousands marching peacefully for dignity. The reverberating power of Martin Luther King Jr.'s voice declaring dreams of equality, these created awe that fused individual participants into a moral collective, willing to face violence and sacrifice for the movement. Climate activism similarly attempts to create awe around the planet itself. Images of Earth from space, documentaries showing nature's majesty and fragility, campaigns that reframe environmental protection not as policy details, but as a spiritual and collective calling. When successful, this awe-based approach fuses people with ecological identity, transforming abstract concern into visceral commitment. But now consider the dark side, because it's equally real and considerably more dangerous. Niccolò Machiavelli, the Renaissance political philosopher, understood intuitively what modern psychology is now confirming. Rulers who want to bind people to the state must stage grand spectacles that inspire awe. Military parades with thousands marching in perfect unison, architectural monuments of staggering scale, elaborate ceremonies with precise choreography, and dramatic symbolism. All of these create awe that fuses individual identity with national or political identity. Look at the massive rallies staged by totalitarian regimes throughout history. The Nuremberg rallies of Nazi Germany weren't just political events. They were carefully orchestrated awe experiences designed to dissolve individual identity and fuse participants with the Nazi collective. Torchlight processions, synchronized movements, towering banners and monuments. The hypnotic rhythm of collective chanting, every element was calculated to create overwhelming awe that would bind individuals to the movement. The same mechanisms appear in extremist groups of all kinds. Religious cults create awe through charismatic leaders, emotional worship experiences, and group rituals that generate powerful feelings of vastness and transcendence. Terrorist organizations use awe-inspiring rhetoric about cosmic significance, historical destiny, and ultimate sacrifice. Even violent street gangs use territory symbolism, collective rituals, and narratives of power that create small-scale awe and fusion. Friedrich Nietzsche warned about what he called the herd mentality, the human tendency to dissolve individual will and conscience into the collective. He saw this as a dangerous regression from authentic selfhood, an escape from the burden of individual responsibility into the comfortable anonymity of the group. While Nietzsche might have been too harsh on collective identity generally, his warning resonates here. Awe-induced fusion can indeed cause people to surrender critical thinking, moral autonomy, and individual conscience to the collective. The disturbing truth is that the same neurological and psychological mechanisms that allow you to feel fused with humanity or nature can also fuse you with a nation preparing for unjust war, a political movement embracing authoritarian control, or an ideological group nurturing hatred toward outsiders. This raises a crucial question. How do we distinguish between healthy awe that connects us to worthy collectives and dangerous awe that binds us to destructive ones? Navigating awe consciously. The answer begins with awareness. Once you understand that awe is a powerful psychological mechanism that shapes identity fusion, you can begin to observe it operating in your own life and in society around you. Pay attention to when you feel awe and what collective identity it's connected to. When you attend a political rally and feel chills of inspiration, ask yourself, is this awe expanding my sense of connection to all people, or is it hardening boundaries between us and them? When religious or spiritual experiences generate awe, examine whether they're increasing compassion and openness, or fostering in-group superiority and out-group hostility. The quality of the collective you're fusing with matters enormously. Some questions to consider. Does this group expand or narrow my circle of moral concern? Does it make me more open to people different from me or more suspicious and hostile? Does it encourage critical thinking and questioning or demand unquestioning loyalty? Does it acknowledge uncertainty and complexity or claim absolute certainty and simplicity? Does it respect individual autonomy or demand that individuals subordinate themselves completely to group demands? Groups that use awe ethically tend to connect you to the largest possible circles of identity, humanity, nature, life, consciousness itself, while still respecting individual autonomy and diversity. Groups that weaponize awe tend to create strong fusion with narrow identities, this nation against others, this religion against heretics, this ideology against all alternatives, while demanding conformity and suppressing dissent. But beyond simply being cautious of manipulative uses of awe, we can also consciously cultivate awe experiences that connect us to expansive and life-affirming collective identities. Nature provides perhaps the safest and most accessible source of awe. When you experience awe in response to forests, mountains, oceans, or the night sky, you're not fusing with a human-constructed political or religious identity that might have hidden agendas. You're connecting with the earth itself, with life, with the vast cosmic context that humbles all human conflicts and pretensions. Research shows that even brief nature exposure, a walk in a park, watching clouds, tending a garden can generate sufficient awe to shift perspective and increase prosocial behavior. You don't need to climb Everest or visit the Grand Canyon, though such experiences are powerful. Awe is available in everyday encounters with nature if you're present enough to notice. Art, music, and literature offer another path. The awe you feel listening to a symphony, standing before a masterwork of painting, or reading a novel that captures the depth of human experience, these connect you to human creativity and shared consciousness. They fuse you with the collective project of making meaning and beauty in the face of mortality and uncertainty. Scientific understanding itself can be a profound source of awe, contemplating the scale of the universe. The intricacy of cellular biology, the elegance of mathematical truths, or the deep history of evolution, this generates awe that fuses you with reality itself. With the project of understanding, with the long lineage of humans who have gazed at nature and asked why, even meditation and contemplative practices, which might seem focused on individual inner experience, can generate awe. Many meditation traditions explicitly aim at dissolving the boundaries of separate selfhood and experiencing interconnection with all of existence. This is awe directed toward the largest possible identity, consciousness itself, being itself, the totality of what is. The key is intentionality. Don't just passively experience awe as it randomly arises. Actively seek out awe experiences and consciously direct them toward expansive rather than narrow identities. The expanding circle. This brings us to perhaps the most important implication of this research. Awe is not just about which group you fuse with, but about how large that group is. The psychologist Peter Singer wrote about the expanding circle of moral concern, the historical tendency for humans to gradually extend their sense of who matters morally. Early humans cared primarily about their immediate family. Over time, the circle expanded to the tribe, then to the city-state, then to the nation, and now increasingly to all of humanity and even to animals and ecosystems. Awe appears to be one of the primary psychological mechanisms that enables this expansion. When you experience awe that connects you to humanity as a whole, rather than just your nation or ethnic group, you're expanding the circle. When you feel awe toward nature that makes you identify with life itself, rather than just human concerns, you're expanding further still. The most powerful awe experiences are those that connect you to the largest possible identities while still honoring smaller and more intimate ones. You don't have to stop being fused with your family or your local community to also be fused with humanity or nature. These can be nested circles, each encompassing and honoring the others. The problem arises when narrow identities are treated as ultimate and exclusive, when national identity becomes supreme and demands hostility toward other nations, or when religious identity becomes totalizing and demands seeing other faiths as enemies. Awe becomes a weapon that divides rather than unites. The antidote is awe directed toward the absolute largest categories: being, existence, consciousness, life, the universe itself. These identities are so vast they cannot exclude anyone or anything. There is no them when the collective identity is everything that exists. This might sound abstract or mystical, but it's actually quite practical. Many wisdom traditions have recognized this principle. Buddhist practice aims at recognizing interconnection with all sentient beings. Indigenous spiritualities often emphasize identity with nature and all living things. Humanistic philosophy stresses our shared participation in human consciousness and meaning-making. These aren't just nice ideas. They're frameworks for directing awe toward maximally inclusive identities. The question before you, which brings us back to you, standing under those stars, or feeling that music vibrate through your body, or gazing at that vast landscape. In that moment of awe, when your small self dissolves and you feel absorbed into something larger, you have more choice than you might think. The fusion that's happening isn't predetermined. The we you're merging with isn't fixed. You can allow awe to fuse you with narrow identities, your nation against others, your group against outsiders, your ideology against alternatives. This path offers the comfort of belonging and the power of collective identity, but it ultimately divides the world into us and them, inside and outside, worthy and unworthy. Or you can consciously direct your awe toward the largest possible circles, toward humanity, toward life, toward existence itself. This path offers something even more profound, a sense of connection that excludes nothing and no one, an identity vast enough to contain all the diversity and complexity of the world. The next time you encounter something that fills you with awe, perhaps tonight looking up at the stars, or tomorrow listening to music that moves you, or next week standing before something beautiful or terrible or sublime, pause for a moment. Feel the small self dissolving as it always does in awe. Notice the space that opens up as your individual ego contracts, and then ask yourself, what am I becoming one with? Which we am I choosing to fuse with in this moment? That choice, repeated across thousands of awe experiences throughout your life, shapes not just your own identity, but the future of our collective existence. Because we don't just experience awe as isolated individuals. We share it, transmit it, create it for each other through art and ritual and story and song. Every time someone experiences awe that expands their circle of concern, the entire world becomes slightly more unified. Every time awe is weaponized to narrow identities and harden boundaries, the world becomes more fractured and hostile. You are not just you. You are part of something far bigger, a living planet, a conscious universe, an evolving story of matter becoming aware of itself. The question is not whether you'll fuse with something larger than yourself. Awe ensures that you will. The only question is, How large will you let that something be? Stand under the stars tonight. Let yourself feel small. And then, consciously, deliberately, become one with everything.